Thank you, Peter. Hey, David, record?
Yes, ma'am.
So good, so good. All right. Oh, yeah, Raina was one of the last speakers here. I want to be sure I don't forget to give an attribution this morning. We're going to be talking about St. Martha. She's in approximately 3 stories in the Bible, 2 of which you heard in the readings. And the third story has a little snippet that just says Martha served. So, I didn't include that one. That's what we typically know about St. Martha. So a lot of the rest of this comes from my friend Kathleen McGowan, the author, who has spent her life, or at least the last 30 years of it, researching and writing about Mary Magdalene. And you can't write about Mary Magdalene without writing about Martha. So she has discovered a lot of stuff, and she's passed it on to the people that listen to her. So I thought, whoa, I'll bet some College Heights people haven't heard this before. Let's talk about St. Martha. Okay. So the problem with sticking to the Bible, of course, is that we focus really mostly on the Mary Martha story, what I call stuck in the kitchen story. And Martha becomes the representative of the active Christian, the Christian in service. And Mary's in the other room listening to Jesus, and she's the contemplative one. And depending on the translation, you get Mary has chosen the good part, sometimes the better part. You can read a lot into that little story, and you can read a lot into it. I put the Lazarus story in, or at least Martha's part of the Lazarus story, but because it shows her as the one, she's kind of in charge. She's the one who, when Jesus finally gets there, charges out of the house and is like, if you'd gotten here when I asked you, he'd still be alive. Where have you been? You can sort of imagine that's the tone of voice. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. Not everybody begrats Jesus. That's kind of a cool thing. Okay, but there is more to Martha than endless hostessing. And this morning, we're going to flesh out her story a bit more. We use the Bible, but we need to go beyond the Bible to non-canonical readings and to some ancient cultural traditions, which sometimes academia is loath to incorporate into the story because you can't prove anything. But, if a cultural tradition has been going on for centuries and centuries, there's something there. It didn't just arrive, it wasn't just made up out of whole cloth. It's connected to something. So there is information. You have to decide how much you're going to depend on it. But, so there are 3 points to make before we get into what the rest of Martha's life looked like after Jesus died. The first thing to notice is this. The Bible tells us Mary, Martha, and Lazarus are siblings, brother and sisters. The Mary they're talking about is Mary Magdalene. Now, it is true that nowhere in the Bible does it explicitly say that. In fact, some people assume it's a different Mary, and they call her Mary of Bethany, because that's where she lives. But in fact, there's no mention in the Bible of Mary of Bethany either. There's just Mary, the sister of Martha, who happens to live in Bethany. But whoever this Mary is, she sits at the feet of Jesus with the other disciples. She anoints Jesus, wipes his feet with her hair. That's a fairly close relationship. If that isn't Mary Magdalene, we have 2 women with relationships that close to Jesus, 2 women who are disciples of Jesus. I'm listening to you every time you open your mouth kind of way. Something just says, if that had actually been true, we would have heard about it. You can't put two women in a group like that, both claiming that close a relationship to Jesus and not have some interaction between the two of them. So, anyway, when we move into the non-canonical literature, it immediately becomes clear that it's Mary Magdalene. It's just not mentioned in the Bible, and so it's a source of confusion for people, because they don't often go outside the Bible. But Martha shows up in all kinds of places out there, and she's in the Pistis Sophia of all things. And, you know, I mean, just, she's there. Okay, so first thing is, it's Martha, Lazarus, and Mary Magdalene who are living together in Bethany. Second thing, which is probably going to be a surprise, is that these three siblings are relatively wealthy. Now, there are a couple sentences in the Bible that give us hints in that direction. One we read this morning was the beginning of the stuck in the kitchen story from Luke. Now, as they went on their way, he entered a village, and a woman named Martha received him into her house. That's into her house, not into her husband's house or into her parents' house or her house. There's no mention of a husband. In fact, Martha is single, and she owns a house. A little unusual for those times. So that's one hint. Another hint comes from the first couple verses of chapter 8 of Luke. Soon afterward, he went on through one town and village after another, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, as well as some women who had been cured of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Herod's steward, Chuza, and Susanna, and many others, who ministered to them out of their own resources. Okay, so you got the picture? Jesus and the disciples have nothing except whatever fish they caught yesterday, but they got to eat and whatever else, you know, they need for support. And there's a group of women, essentially patronesses, some of whom have money. I mean, you don't just feed 13 guys out of thin air. Somebody on that list of women has money. Well, I don't know about the others, but Mary Magdalene certainly had the wherewithal to do that. Why do I say that? Well, let me introduce you to a fascinating little book, non-canonical, you bet, called The Life of St. Mary Magdalene and of her sister, St. Martha. Now, this was written originally in the 9th century by a historian Benedictine monk named Rabanus Maurus, M-A-U-R-U-S. The original manuscript is lost, but there are a couple 12th century copies, one of which is in the library at Magdalen College at Oxford. And Kathleen actually, through a friend of a friend, got into the library, which is no mean feat, got to put on the white gloves and turn the pages of this 12th century copy of the Rabanus Maurus book. She was beside herself. It was really fun. No, in Latin, So let me read you just a little bit from the beginning of Rabanus Maurus's book. In the territory of Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives, 15 stadia, that's about 2 miles, from the holy city, facing east, lies Bethany, the abode of Mary Magdalene, Lazarus, and Martha, so often mentioned in the Gospels, most famous for the visits that our Lord and Savior so often made there, dedicated to hospitality, celebrated for feasts, illustrious for miracles, memorable for the tears he shed there. Remember, he cried when Lazarus died. Magnified for his procession from there. Palm Sunday actually started in Bethany. Noted for his ascension there, and distinguished by the footprints he left there. In this eastern city, Martha, the venerable hostess and most devoted servant of the Son of God, our Lord Jesus Christ, was born. Her noble mother, Eucharia, came from the royal line of Israel. She was a Benjaminite. Her father, Theophilus, a Syrian, was not merely born noble, but indeed took his nobility from a noteworthy title and a most important office, for he was among the chief satraps of the province, which was a great honor among the children of that age, and he was governor and prince of all Syria and of all the regions bordering on the sea. And then they go on about how wonderful the children are, you know. Complete knowledge of Hebrew letters from a young age, blah, blah, blah. Right, this is, hagiography is what we call this, writing about the saints. They're always wonderful. And since they were, as I have said, nobly born and of noble society, they possessed by hereditary right a great patrimony, and also many lands and slaves and much money. They owned the greater part of the city of Jerusalem, and 3 other estates, Bethany in Judea, 2 miles from Jerusalem, Magdala in Galilee, on the left bank of the Sea of Gennesaret, the Sea of Galilee, located in a recess of a mountain 2 miles from Tiberias, and Bethany beyond the Jordan, also in Galilee, where John baptized. Living together in common, they abounded in delights, and the younger brother and sister desired to have Martha, as the firstborn, administer all their belongings and all their lands. Yada, yada. So, you know, she's taking care of all of this stuff. And then later on it says when their father died, they split up the lands among the 3 children. And Lazarus got Jerusalem, Martha got Bethany, and Mary got Magdala. So she isn't just from the town of Magdala, she owns the town of Magdala. This is a different picture than Mary in rags. Yeah, so, okay, it takes a little while to get used to this, but it gets better. It's clear that Jesus is good friends with all 3 of these people. It even says somewhere in the reading that Jesus loved Lazarus and Martha and Mary. He kind of uses the Bethany house where they live as like an Airbnb. You know, whenever he's near Jerusalem, he knows he can stay at Martha's. He'll get a good meal, he's safe, he's among friends, he can relax. It's an important place for him. So fast forward to after the crucifixion, resurrection, ascension, all the appearance stories. Close friends of Jesus need to make themselves scarce. Jerusalem's not a safe place for them. Martha and Lazarus accompany Mary Magdalene away. They go first to Alexandria in Egypt, which has a large Jewish population, and they know people there. And then eventually across the Mediterranean to southern France. They land at Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mer in the Camargue, which is this big marshy region, which includes the delta of the Rhone River, but is also, you know, just marshy. It's full of, it's great, pink flamingos, wild white horses, and black bulls. It's very dramatic. Yeah, it's cool. There are stories of Mary and Lazarus preaching in Marseille, which is a bit to the east of the Camargue. Of course, they get in trouble for doing that. You can't attract a great big crowd without somebody noticing. They eventually get hauled off to appear before the governor, and they end up converting the governor in that conversation, as the story goes. Lazarus stays in Marseille and founds a church and a community and eventually becomes the bishop. Mary moves around a lot. She's preaching and teaching all over southern France, which is part of the reason there's so many churches named after her. She's remembered as having been here and there and here and there, and so, okay. Martha, though, Martha heads north from the Camargue, and I'm looking at the map, I'm guessing she probably followed the river, because most of the rest of it was forest. This is before it had been, you know, logged. And so a bit impassable. But the river, there would have been settlements along the river, and it would have been an easier route. Between Arles and Avignon, along the river, she comes to a little village with a problem. The villagers are being terrorized by a dragon-like beast that lives in, well, sort of in the river, sort of in the woods. It has 6 legs, the head of a lion, a shell like a turtle, a long tail like a snake, and it eats people. They call it the Tarasque, Tarasque. Well, they have not been able to do anything about this beast, and every time he gets hungry, it just... So if you look at the picture, I know it's a little fuzzy, it's low resolution, but the picture on the front of your bulletin is a medieval version of Martha and the Tarasque. And look, he's got legs coming out of his mouth. Yeah, so anyway, this beast was terrorizing the village. The village, as Martha arrives, the villagers ask her for help. Now, you got to remember what Martha has been through. She's seen her brother resurrected. She's seen Jesus work all kinds of miracles. She's the only one besides Peter who has made that confession of faith, I believe you are the Christ. It's Peter and Martha. She is a believer, and she's got this unshakable faith and this sense that miracles are possible because she's seen them. We all think they aren't because we haven't, for the most part. So she goes out with her holy water in one hand, her cross, and this unshakable faith, and she confronts the Tarasque, and she prays. And the beast is tamed. She takes off the belt from around her waist and puts it like a leash around his neck, and she leads him back to the village. Now, here the story diverges. It has 2 endings. One ending is the villagers pounce on it and kill it. I know. But the other ending is they discover it's just hungry. It's just like St. Francis and the wolf. And so the villagers say, well, we can fix that. How about if we feed you something other than our children and you behave? And so it lives, they feed it, and it lives under Martha's protection. So you pick the ending you like. It's okay. We're sort of in mythland, but sort of, we'll talk about where are we when we tell that story. But the point is, Martha decides to stay in the little village, which changes its name and becomes Tarascon, Tarascon, in honor of the beast. Names itself after, we are the people of the Tarasque. We are the Tarascones. She lives very simply, austerely even, contributes to healing when that's needed by somebody because she has some skills there. She tells people her Jesus stories, otherwise known as preaching, and a community begins to form around her. Other miracles occur. She resuscitates a boy who drowned trying to swim across the river to hear her speak. She turns water to wine at a festive gathering of bishops who've come together to consecrate her house as a basilica. And when she died, she was buried in the church that was built over her house. The church is still there, although what you see today is the 12th century building, the Royal College of Santa Marta. And her older sarcophagus is in the crypt. By tradition, she died on June 29th, and every year on the last Sunday in June, a festival is held in town featuring the Tarasque. So if you look at the back of your bulletin, this is from the modern festival. The guys dress up and they haul around on wheels this giant green thing, right? The point is, the people of this region of France see this festival as it's a reenactment of their origin story. This is why this town is here. We are the people of the Tarasque, and we remember that every year with this parade. They have no reason to doubt that the Martha, the personal friend of Jesus, the hostess extraordinaire, is buried in their church, in their town. That's what I mean about ancient cultural traditions contributing to the historical story. They don't do this just because, it's important to them. So it came from somewhere. Who knows what the original beast was 2,000 years ago? There were still things alive that aren't around anymore. I have no idea, but at any rate, if you're ever near Arles or Avignon at the end of June, go see the Tarasque. Martha had a companion and a helper named Marcella, and when Martha died, Marcella made the journey to St. Maximin Santa Baum on the other side of Marseille to tell Mary Magdalene that her sister had died. And Marcella stayed with Mary, wrote a life of Martha, and eventually died there. Marcella's relics are in the church of St. Maximin, where Mary Magdalene's are. She was part of that companion group that came from Jerusalem originally. So, why is it important to bring to light the details of Martha's life? I could think of at least two reasons, and I'm sure others will emerge. The first is, she was more than the stereotype of the stuck in the kitchen that the Bible leaves us with. She was a missionary. She was carrying the good news to Provence as surely as the male disciples carried it out to the rest of the world. People came to the way because she was there for them, preaching, teaching, healing. There were women active at the beginning of the church, in its creation and in its leadership. If we keep their stories alive, excavating, if we have to, we do it in hopes that one day our culture will open up enough to allow women to participate in that way again. UCC's way out in front, of course, but in general, the church is still hanging on to the patriarchal model. And secondly, she's a good example of the value of the active life, the life of service. That famous line, Mary has chosen the better part, is a judgment. Whoever translates it as better has some opinions about active versus contemplative. But it's not that one is better than the other. What's better is for you to live the life that you and your gifts are best suited for. And it's up to you to find the balance, because for most people, there is a balance. So, you've met St. Martha. Did any of that surprise you? Yeah, of course, yay. Okay, I'll let you guys come up and complete the sermon.
Well, we have communion, so we need to hurry along. But the one thing that comes to mind in all of this, and it seems like a very good reconstruction, we find it impossible to believe in miracles. But I will tell you, there are so many miracles that happen. And Aimee Semple McPherson is a good example. She cured so many people. And then people say, oh yeah, but she ran off with her lover. Well, you can go to a whole lot of other places and get a whole lot of other miracles. In Canada, we just saw another one, all these crutches hanging on the wall because of this man in the 20s who was helping people. He took the active life.
I just have to add into your last point about maybe we'll finally catch up with women being involved. And I was struck last week by the picture of Pope Leo actually sitting and praying with the Archbishop of Canterbury, who is the first female Archbishop of Canterbury. So maybe we're moving, maybe, you know.
Thank you, Polly. And thank you, Kevin. You've done a tremendous job on the Bougainvillea. So, yeah, you gave us a tremendous study on Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, mostly on Martha. What I really loved about what she had to say was she challenged Jesus, even though they were friends. She challenged him, saying, you know, if you were here, he wouldn't have died. My God, we do that through life today. If I'd done this, this wouldn't have happened. We still do it. So there she was doing it then, despite the fact she was Jesus' friend. And Jesus took it and accepted it. And she asked. How many of us are able to do that? Ask. She just asked. And Jesus succumbed, and he did. He brought Lazarus back to life. But what goes on in that city today has been going on all over. We get these stories and these bits and pieces that keeps us trudging on, moving on. Even the May Day parade that we were part of when we were in Europe, I don't know how it got started, but probably it was something like this. And I haven't done, but thank you for doing all that research and what you did. Thank you.
We are going to have communion today. And what is communion? A gathering of people together to celebrate and to also, you're going to break the bread. Who is washing the dishes? Who is taking care of the cups? Who is seeing that everybody had something? I mean, she really had a mission, and you know, and probably carried it on. Maybe even had a restaurant somewhere along the way. But anyways, the importance of that, and so many women aren't honored for that.
If other people want to talk, I really want to hear you during coffee hour, but we're trying to get Peter into the city for a rehearsal at a fixed time, and so he only has a few minutes left. So let's move right along, shall we? Okay, we're going to sing from the Little Green Book, which we don't get to use very often, Companions on the Journey, 519.